Hello, welcome live to the Jim Kleiber Show. Today is Tuesday, September 22nd, 2020, and it's still a pandemic. Turns out the pandemic doesn't just go away if we wish it to go away. It requires some work, it requires some coordination, it requires some honesty about how viruses spread and how people infect each other. And I say that with a bit of sarcasm or a lot of sarcasm in my voice because it's not sarcasm, more of kind of this passive aggression, this frustration. Like, really? We haven't figured this out yet. I was just reading something on Twitter. It was talking about how many of us thought that African countries would do poorly when it came to COVID, but a lot of them actually have good public health infrastructures in place as it relates to viral spreading. So a lot of them have learned a lot from HIV and controlling HIV, and especially from Ebola. They've had Ebola outbreaks in West Africa and kind of Central East Africa as well. And so they've learned a lot. I remember flying through, it must have been Kenya, but I think Uganda had the same thing. Tanzania may have, but I'm pretty sure it was Kenya and Uganda. Years ago, they had temperature checks when you landed at the airport. One of them even had kind of like an infrared scanner. You walk up and you look up and you could see on the TV monitor whether you were over the temperature limit for a human being. And they have you fill out a form and they do quarantine and things like this if necessary for Ebola. So it seems like they already had some of the necessary infrastructure in place. Whereas I don't know if the US has that to this day. I don't know if we have temperature checks or some type of health screening at the border when we arrive. Especially internationally, but I doubt it when we do it from state to state. I would hope so, but I highly doubt it. But I don't know if we even have it from an international perspective. I remember in the beginning we didn't, and everyone was jammed together. And this was back in March. People were flying back from overseas, and everyone was stuck together in airports. People were showing photos of everyone just herded together like maltreated cows. And so we're still in a pandemic, and I don't honestly see much changing unless we have a change in government, unless we have a new administration coming in and changing the way that this is coordinated at a national level. I don't see it changing much. Unless by some miracle, or they call it a miracle, we get a vaccine. It's not really a miracle. It's plenty of scientific research and hard work being put in by many, 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 many scientists and healthcare workers around the world right now, and financiers and business people. And it's not just the researchers, but it's also the people who are planning to build up the production capacity and the distribution capacity and the communication materials that'll be necessary to spread a vaccine faster than the virus is spreading. And so we just sit and wait. I mean, gosh, what is it now? It's September. I've been sitting and waiting for 6 months now. Look at the beard. I've been waiting for this long. Look at it, really. And I don't think the plan was for us to just sit and wait. I think the plan was for us to pause for a very short time and then to start implementing the testing and tracing so that we could see how the virus was spreading, so that we could have a deeper intuition about how this thing spreads, and so that we could open up some parts of society and close others when things were spreading in those spots. But that requires coordination, that requires cooperation at a high level, and I just don't think we got it. I think frankly, many people in the federal administration in the U.S., just especially at the top, I think many people, a few, or maybe just Trump, I don't know, said that, I don't know. I don't know why. I just know that high level coordination did not happen. And here we are, still waiting. And it's going to get worse. It's starting to get cold outside, so the virus will pick up again, because now there's no certainty on that, but I'm fairly confident, as most viral infections like this pick up in the fall. So slightly distracted. There's a noise up above. This is the problem with recording in a basement. It's not a super old house. I think it's probably 40, 50 years old, but there's one spot up there where if somebody stands, the floor creaks really loud. And it's a spot near like the kitchen, maybe near the sink or near the stove or something. So if somebody's cooking anything, that spot right there just... So I'll be having a guest join me in a few minutes. It's my friend Caleb Cliff. He's joined before, and I'm excited to have him back on the show. And one thing I really wanted to talk about with Caleb is something that's been putting a lot of stress on me, or maybe better to say, the thing that I have been putting stress on to myself about. Oh, that's a jumbled sentence. The thing that has really been stressing me out, that I have been stressing myself out with, is this idea of trying to save the world, or change the world, or save somebody else, or change somebody else. This idea of focusing on the outcome of somebody in our lives or in society in general. I say this as the election is just about 41 days away, and voter registration deadlines for some states are in about 2 weeks. So this is a large election in the U.S., and many people are framing it as the most important election since 1860 or 1864, when the country was at civil war. Now, the challenge is many people these days, especially I think because of the internet and social media, have a tendency to exaggerate things. Perhaps this is the most important one, and I think it probably is. But it's hard to read through the exaggeration on the internet, because if social media and media in general is about getting attention, one of the best ways to get attention from people is to exaggerate things. This is the most unprecedented thing that has ever happened in the state of the world. Can you believe that this is happening? And you're like, what the hell's going on? And so you pay attention. But it's what's that story? Chicken Little and the sky is falling. I think it was Chicken Little. Oh, the sky is falling. The sky is falling. And then people stopped believing that the sky was falling. And then when the sky did fall, people just didn't believe it would happen. So that's the problem with being so exaggerating, so hyperbolic when we talk about situations in life, is that it can desensitize us to what really is a big deal. So when everything on the news is breaking news, oh my God, this is unprecedented. I think I've talked about this before on the show, but this idea of unprecedented, somebody like Trump who is coming in to try to say he's doing something new, when somebody says unprecedented, it can be like a bad unprecedented, or it could be a great unprecedented. Oh my God, this has never been done before. I jumped into my sportscaster mode, but oh my goodness. I was watching a lot of hockey last night. This is my tangent. I'm definitely going on this tangent, but I was watching a lot of hockey last night, Stanley Cup Finals, and I've been a big hockey fan growing up in Michigan. And one thing I really love about hockey announcers is the enthusiasm that they have, and the catchphrases or idioms that they'll often use. I was reading one. There's this guy, Mickey Redmond. He's a famous sportscaster for the Detroit Red Wings. I think he also did Montreal Canadiens back in the day, and he used to play for both teams. And I was looking at his Wikipedia page, and it called these Mickeyisms. And what did it say one of them was? It was something like, there was a scramble in front of the goal, and there were a lot of people there, and someone scored. And then he said something like, there were 10 hungry lumberjacks and one big pork chop, and someone was lucky enough to grab it. And you're like, what? What? Mickey Redmond? 10 lumberjacks scrambling for a big pork chop? So I like the colorful language and the color commentary that they'll do in that. But at the same time, see, I don't know if that is so hyperbolic and so exaggerative, oh my God, this has never been done before. They don't say that too often. Well, no, let me take it back. They say that a lot with regards to different stats. They'll pull up a different stat and be like, oh my God, that nobody has ever made, this is the youngest player to ever score a goal in the Stanley Cup Finals. And you're like, what? Okay. Or this is the first time somebody has ever scored a goal, their first goal in the NHL in the Stanley Cup Finals. And you're like, okay. I wonder if a lot of this exaggeration and hyperbole comes from sports, and especially how much we just rail and rail on the stats. Oh my God, this has never been done before. They haven't won in 35 years. All this kind of over and over again. I wonder if it's the media, the news rather, gets it from the sports, or if the sports gets it from the news, or if it all just comes from the environment. That when we're all battling for attention, the ones that speak in a more calm cadence, calm demeanor, don't get the attention. They need to be loud and boisterous and or they got to be angry and frustrated all the time. Wow, I sound like a crazy guy to myself. So I'm excited for Caleb to join and talk a little bit more about this. And I think the original topic was about how I can put pressure on myself, and I imagine some of you do as well, to go out there and change things, especially when we see so much, we hear so much about how this is the first time this has ever happened, or, oh my God, this is going to be the worst election in history, and if we don't stop it, then nothing but dread will come as a result. And so it's this deep intensity, this deep driving to do something to change the outcome. And if we don't do something to change the outcome, maybe we're lazy, or we're cowards, or we're all these other things that we can blast on ourselves. I don't know. I think I've been indoctrinated with this idea of changing the world. I was a part of an organization called ISEC, and it was all about trying to have the impact on the world. All it's about impact. I remember going to the meeting when I first joined, and the guy just kept saying like something like impact or impact. I can't remember the hand signal, but there was like either hands together or like fist. It's all about the impact. It's all about the impact. The magical word is impact. And then you have other organizations like Ashoka that works with nonprofits, but they're known for coining. What do they coin? Like social entrepreneurship, and this idea of change makers, people who make change. I'm like, well, don't we all make change in some way? And change agents and innovation and all this stuff. A lot of this stuff is about going out there and trying to change the world. And at what point do we know if we're changing the world enough? And if we're trying to change the world, does that say that we're inherently dissatisfied with how the world is right now? What is the relationship between trying to change something and loving something? Can we appreciate something as is and still want to change it or try to change it? Is there a way to change it that's not so focused on how it changes, but just the process of change and the process of play? What about the idea of not changing it and just keeping it the same? Is that okay? After all, if a lot of life is about maintenance, maintaining our houses, maintaining our relationships, maintaining our gardens, maintaining the farms, maintaining the businesses, maintaining the cars, maintaining our body, maintaining all these different things. is that about preventing change? So is it all about changing, or is some of it about preventing change? This is fascinating. It comes into a concept that I've talked a lot about when I look at fitness. I remember looking at one fitness forum, and it was talking about two things. It talked about stability and mobility. And it said, stability is the ability to prevent movement, to stop something from moving, and mobility is the ability to move. And so it was this idea that our bodies are built around, our joints especially are built around stability and mobility. And often the joints are alternating. So if you have one joint that's built primarily around mobility, the next one down the line will be focused more on stability. I'm trying to think of an example. Ankle, for example. The ankle is focused much more on mobility, and then you go up to the knee, and the knee is focused much more on stability. And I think if you go up to the hip is more mobility as well. So, yeah, I think it's interesting when we think about change and how much we want to change the world. But how do we balance that with how much we want to keep the world the same? And maybe this is just the deep political conversation that we often get ourselves into, how much to change and how much to keep the same. And we're going to launch into inviting my friend Caleb on and see what he thinks about some of this stuff. Ahoy, matey.
Hi. It's been a minute.
He thinks he's talking, but I can't hear him.
Oh, really? Really? Oh.
Yep, he's not on mute, but he's not on voice. So I'll keep talking, and I don't know if Caleb will be able to join us. Caleb. I would say, Caleb, if you could just test your microphone and the mic setting, maybe, to see if it's showing up. Or maybe it's working. I just don't have my sound on. That's what it is. Yeah. Wait a second. Why am I blaming the other person when I can blame myself? Step one, pay attention to myself. See if I'm doing something wrong before I accuse the other person.
It's okay.
Hey.
I'm reversed. So I don't know if this is like an update, but the last calls I've been doing, I've been reversed, and I feel like I'm used to seeing a reflect, but now I'm like, oh, I go over here and I'm moving that way on the camera. Anyways, sorry. Hi.
Oh, it's mirrored?
Yeah, it's flipped.
Yeah.
It's not mirrored.
Oh.
That's the brain thing. It's like I put my left hand up and I see my right hand go up on the screen.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
You
feel me.
Yeah. Welcome, Caleb, to the show, talking about changing and how we can put pressure on ourselves to change other people, to change the world, to save other people, to save the world, and the balance with changing something else, but also keeping something the same. And so I was talking a little bit about this idea that in fitness, it's a balance between mobility and stability, and how some joints are focused more on mobility and some joints are focused more on stability. Like an ankle is focused much more on mobility, whereas the knee is much more focused on stability. Mobility being the ability to move, and stability the ability to prevent movement.
Right.
And
or ensure good movement.
That prevent movement in certain direction, prevent certain types of movement.
Yeah.
So like the knee is only supposed to move in certain directions. It's not supposed to move this way.
Right.
And if it moves this way, a lot of people tear their meniscus or, all these different things, ACL. And just talking about that, how I felt a lot in my life, the pressure to be a change agent or a change maker or an innovator or something about changing the world, going out and changing things, and how that doesn't seem to jive with the aspect of life being a lot about maintenance, and maintenance is preventing change. Right? So how do you can't go out and change everything, and are we changing things enough? If we're changing something, does that mean we inherently dislike what's going on? And so we want to change it? Are we in this constant state of dissatisfaction with how the world is, so we have to go change it? So I'll just exploring this concept of like why I put pressure on myself and why I think many of us put pressure on ourselves to go change things, and how that may not help us all the time.
It's well, I mean, it's complicated, that's for sure. One thing when I think about, so I think about kind of like the human timeline, and then I think about nature's timeline. And there's a forest here, a really, really nice big natural park here that you can hike in for miles. And I go there pretty regularly, usually at least once a week, if not more, if possible. But what I love about nature is you see, like, it is life and death everywhere. And there are lots of subtle changes happening all the time. Some leaves have fallen, or a plant has been nibbled on by a deer or another type of animal. Or on occasion, there's a much bigger change where this happens pretty frequently, actually, is a log will fall in the forest. And then there is the adaptation to that change. That's very seamless, really, in a way. The plants and, maybe some of the animals are a bit more shocked by it, but the plant life just kind of effortlessly adapts to whatever that change is. Where I think in the human timeline, there's been a lot of regimented and instituted ideas of just how much change there should be. And being old enough to have lots of memory before the internet was a common utility or what have you. Change didn't seem quite as prevalent when I was growing up in the 80s. Like, there was change, of course, but there weren't nearly as many fashion trends that were circulating. There wasn't a driver like the internet to circulate ideas around change either. And I think, too, technology has somewhat influenced us in the sense that, you get updates for applications and for your computer on such a regular basis. You're kind of like, do I really need all of this? Are you just sort of, making excuses for having a job, so you just keep forcing all of this change on us because you can't keep up with one new little thing that requires a new update? And so I think it's a really good question, because I think there's a lot of external forces telling us that constant change is inevitable or absolutely a must. And I think that definitely needs to be kind of pushed back upon. But to your bigger question, I would say sometimes change can feel very nitpicky, right? You can be like, I don't like the way you dot your I's. And you're like, really? Does that matter? Is that really the thing that you don't like? Or is there does that actually speak to something more about personality, or about, maybe a little bit of gossip you heard about me, but you haven't actually asked if it was true, or something to that effect, And I think when I think of change, good, positive, instrumental change for people is, in most cases, they have to feel like they're the ones making the change, even if they really weren't the seed for it. And secondarily, it's usually what I would consider more of a broad backdrop change, like a change of job would be a huge, significant change, but it wouldn't be like I stopped wearing the color red, which could also be a slightly significant change, but you get it. It's more surface. It's not this thing that causes many other things in your life.
It's this idea that it's almost like a small change versus a change that cascades.
Correct.
If you change a job, you change a lot of things, especially if it's like moving to a new place.
Mm-hmm.
Moving to a new place is not, it's a big change because it changes so many other things.
Yeah.
Now I have to find a new dentist. Now I have to figure out what the store hours are. Now I have to figure out what the public transportation is. Now I have to figure out what the parking laws are. Now I have to figure out and
Yeah.
I've gone through this many, many, many times, so I can tell you about the little changes that happen.
I have moved many times.
Yeah,
In
right.
fact, I
Yeah.
counted recently. I think it's 28.
Holy crap!
Yeah. So I'm familiar
Some,
with
so
change.
that's including like within a city, right? Between like
Yeah,
different. Yeah,
all, and with
yeah,
my family growing up too, which
yeah.
we happened to move a lot when I was a certain age. So
But even that adds a lot. I mean, even moving within the same city adds change because again, it's like, okay, what's the new bus schedule, or what's the new
well, and you have to
ordinance for
update
this
all your
area, or who are my new
well,
neighbors, or who are
where all your address is being kept, right? You know, it's attached to credit cards. It's attached to, your library. If you do that, it's attached to so many things. So yeah, uprooting yourself. I think that's one of the, again, like getting a new job. You might get a new job in a new city, and so suddenly it's like a whole new existence almost.
gosh, yeah, and it's just the entanglement of so many things. So many things are so intricately woven nowadays, or we just have so many things going on.
Yes.
We own so many physical and digital things
Mhm.
that we're interacting with all the time.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I intentionally do try to keep a more minimalist life because I have been mobile so much of it. It's very cumbersome to like have all this stuff. So I've really let go of so many things in the past, particularly the past 12 years. But that was a practice I just had to start because I was like, I'm so tired of every time I move, which was frequent enough. But all of this, it was just like an avalanche of shift. And so, but yeah, but in a sense though, so that's more, again, that's still more metaphorical to what you're speaking of. So it's like you want to impress upon some character trait or like a pillar, right, of a person, let's say.
well, maybe it is, maybe it's not. I like the string you're pulling on because I think there is this element of maybe I put a lot of pressure on myself to change what's happening in society to keep up.
Yeah.
Right? I have to change a lot just to maintain.
Right.
And this is something that, I mean, the reason that iFeelio no longer works on Android or iOS is because Android and iOS changed. They changed, and I had to change to keep up, and I have to keep changing to keep up,
Yeah.
which is, that's interesting. They had to change to stay the same. Right?
Right. That's,
And
well,
maybe,
like I refuse to download what is it, Catalina?
yeah, I don't have it either. And Big
Well,
Sur,
it won't
so
work.
there's a new
It
update
will
for Mac
not work
OS
well on
called Big
this
Sur
computer.
that's coming out soon, and I don't even have Catalina, which is the previous update.
Right. Oh wait, there's another one.
Yeah, there's one coming out in the fall. Yeah, I think they put one out almost every year. But
Yeah. But
but yeah, so that means we almost have to keep swimming to just stay in the same place. Maybe that's it. It's like we're in a river and there's a very strong current coming against us. And we don't want to move. We want to stay in the same spot, but we have to keep swimming.
well,
It's a lot of work to stay in the same spot.
but do you think? Well, and this gets to the ever famous status quo, right?
Uh-huh.
That is the idea that the state of things remains the same,
Mm.
right? And so people always talk, oh, it's status quo. If it's something, it's often usually mentioned when someone's disappointed about the fact that things are not changing enough,
Ah,
right?
yeah.
I think right now I would agree that things like maybe people would feel better or feel heard if more stuff was happening. For example, with like cops being held more accountable for their actions. For example,
Mm.
that's a little too much status quo. How convenient is it for them to not have their body cameras on at very, very important moments or things like that? And it's like, well, why do you have these things if you're still not changing the status quo? You have these ornamental suggestions, but you're really not fundamentally changing.
Makes me think about Yeah. I mean, so like body cameras. Somebody puts body cameras in because they want to make a change. They want the way of the interaction between police officers and the community to change.
Yeah.
And then maybe some police officers like, well, we don't want it to change, so we're going to fight against that change, and we're going to try to maintain this stability.
Right.
Like, oh, we want mobility. No. It's not changing. This is staying firm. This is how it is, and this is how we're going to make it. But to keep it that way requires a lot of. Oh, damn. Hold on. Do not disturb mode. How do I turn that on? Oh, I don't even know anymore. Okay. Oh, here it is. Do not disturb. Okay, we're not going to get any of those ding dings anymore. But yeah, so here we go. That's a perfect example. Boing, ding, ding, little change in my environment. I'm looking at the screen and all of a sudden these notifications pop up. Oh, shoot, I don't want that to happen. Now I have to do extra work to prevent that change. And maybe it's less about, or maybe it's also about, there's energy that required to make change, but there's also a lot of energy required to prevent change.
Being stubborn or holding a grudge or all those things, I think, do seem to take a lot of energy. And it's like, I think when I think of like Native Americans standing their ground and trying to protect their land, like that's a good stubborn, that's really necessary. Whereas, let's say you're in a relationship and your partner is asking for some kind of incremental change in you, a compromise of sorts. Maybe there's something you do that they're not that into, and you're like, nope, I'm just gonna stay right here. But how much effort is there to just hold your ground versus shifting a little bit away from the thing that the thing that's familiar. And it's like, maybe, why is it so hard to make that shift? I mean, I'm someone who's made a lot of changes. I think it's a bit more natural for me to not get too stuck in stuff. But I've also had moments of being very stubborn, especially when I was younger and like wanted to, I think, just to be counter to whoever it was, if it was my parents or a brother or sister, like, no, I don't want to do it.
It's like when someone's trying to drag the kid and they just like plop down and play dead.
Like, literally just go limp.
Literally, we want you to move in this direction. I am not moving.
Right. Nope.
Or dogs when they go really low. You're trying. It's funny. I saw this guy walking his puppy the other day, and his little puppy, I think it was only a couple months old. I asked him, and he gets a few blocks, a few houses down, and the puppy just sat down. He was trying to pull the puppy, and the puppy didn't move. It was, decent size. It didn't move at all.
Right.
And so the guy just like sat down with the puppy.
I mean, and I think that's nice to hear. I see that with a lot of dog owners, and then the dog owner tends to get like pretty harsh.
I mean, I think he tried for a while and was getting somewhat harsh, but maybe also it's, where else am I going to go? It's pandemic. It's a nice day outside. Like, what am I going to do? Go to the bar? No. Am I going to go to the store? No. It's okay. Maybe
the dog had the best idea and it just took all of that pulling to figure it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting because you made me think of in some of the concepts of Taoism, and which Tai Chi is something, comes from that, and also Qigong, basically different ways of relating to internal and external Qi, and there just being a natural flow of life. And so in Taoism, you have this concept of kind of the effortless movement and change that is being in accordance with nature, in accordance with a certain balance that exists in the universe. I mean, I think humans have strayed from that like for a couple hundred years at this point.
I would say much longer.
Well, I mean,
agriculture
deeply straight. Like once the post-industrial revolution, like we just went off the charts. Once things became motorized with trains and cars.
Well, I mean, just even what I say on a deeper level, like agriculture, because once we started having agriculture, then we had to try to stop our land from getting flooded. We had to make sure that the land got rain and water. So we started building irrigation. We started diverting water. We started like domesticating plants and crossbreeding them and doing all this stuff. And like we started to try to prevent the other animals from eating our plants and like all this stuff to try to like build walls and moats around what we were doing and prevent it from changing. Earth moving equipment and like
right. I wonder,
killing the land and those stuff.
Permanent daytime if we could. Yeah.
What's up?
I said, would we create permanent daytime if we could?
We did. It's a light bulb.
Well, I meant literally pause the Earth from its turning. But anyway,
we might, or
I hope not.
Or permanent nighttime. It depends.
Right. Well, yeah.
Depends on
whatever side of the planet you're on. So as to not get too far from your big question though, of feeling that there is a desire in you to want to help, right? But that feels like it requires some change of other people. Maybe some very powerful people, or maybe it's like a larger group of people that you are like, but if we do this thing together, it's going to cause this much bigger other thing to happen over here, right? But that's not anything but easy to do.
Life is just a whack-a-mole game, isn't it? For those people who aren't familiar, whack-a-mole was a game that was probably in the 90s, I'd say, maybe 80s.
Started even in the 80s, I think.
80s, okay, maybe it was earlier. It was like a mechanical game you'd play at an arcade or something. And you basically had this big mallet that was kind of a foam mallet, and these little moles would pop up in different circles at different times, and you had to hit the mole on the top of the head with the mallet, and then a different mole would pop up. So you had to constantly just hit these different moles that were popping up out of holes. It
definitely feels like a game where the name came first.
Yeah. But like, that's the challenge, like get all these people together and we make this huge change, but then now there's other things that changed and we have to try to change those things or stop those things from changing. It's this constant chase.
Well, and I mean, gosh, speaking of change, I mean, the pandemic has, and that's a very interesting thought, is like, you had to change.
Most
maybe not had. Well, but you did. You had to stop going to bars. You had to stop.
Oh, me personally, yes.
But everyone to some extent had to change something about.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but my gosh, what's interesting though is if you think in terms of a societal, what feels like would be a more compassionate society. We have not shown those colors as well as I think we could. In areas, there's been like small groups of people or organizations who have been doing really good things. But then in other areas, it's tricky. I get it. There's a lot of hierarchies. One thing leads to another thing, leads to another thing, and before you actually get to the root. So that's been a very, like you said, where it feels really necessary that change should happen. Like people shouldn't be evicted from their apartments and houses because of having lost their job because of COVID happening. Like that just doesn't feel fair, right?
Because that's changing the law to maintain the home
stability.
Residency. So it's change for stability.
It's true. But that hasn't.
Because this environment has changed, we want to keep this the same, so we have to change something so that this doesn't impact this.
Right. Well, because and I think that's a very obvious thing of like, well, one of these things needs to be stable. I need to know I have a roof to sleep under. I have a bed to sleep on. I have the family that I live with, to be there or what have you. And, chaos can remain true everywhere else in a sense, but I need this one stable element to always come back to, home base, literally. And that to me is, if we can't ensure that for the people who have homes or residences of some kind, then that invites a whole host of other questions and worries. And, there's a deep impact if we are not careful for all the people that have lost jobs, can't afford the bills in the same way they could. All of a sudden you have a huge homeless problem. And that then becomes, it doesn't go away. They don't drift off into their own island and into the ocean. They're still here, but now they're living on the streets or squatting in houses or, tent encampments are showing up. A huge one was in downtown Philly. I had no idea it existed until driving a friend to the airport recently. And, got used to, sadly, seeing that in Oakland. But, anyway, that just a very real one of what you're talking about, where to change in order to support, where to change in order to support other stability, and where to maybe not be so stubborn so that this other change can happen. Yeah, it's a big one.
Maybe, this sounds like the essence of many, many, many political conflicts, but also just human conflicts in general, is that one person wants to change and the other person does not want to change a specific thing.
Yeah. I think they call it war.
War.
Yeah.
What is it good for?
Absolutely nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll say it again.
This definitely has a different flavor when I'm talking to another human, especially another human as Caleb. It feels similarly crazy, but not individual crazy, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Something about shared crazy that feels better.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
Well, and talk about that, but so what I'm guessing that underneath that question from you, is there something, a personal experience you had recently, or?
I am stressed. I've been stressed for 6 months on and off because I'm not doing enough to resolve the pandemic and change the situation. I'm not doing enough directly with COVID-19 in terms of testing and tracing or trying to come up with the technology to help with that. I'm not doing enough to get people registered to go out and vote so that we get a national government that will coordinate this at a national level and a more minute detail, instead of just saying, it's not a big deal, it'll go away. Like somebody that will bring more cooperation across the states and across the world, so that I'm not doing enough towards that political goal. What else? That I'm not doing enough to help people deal with the emotions that they're going through right now. I'm sure depression is going up. I'm sure domestic abuse has gone up. I'm sure many things have happened to people. I'm sure stress has gone up.
Oh.
I'm sure loneliness has gone up. I'm sure anxiety has gone up. I'm sure social anxiety, kind of fear of others in some way, has gone up. I'm sure, like my one friend talked about, what is it like when this isolation aspect becomes a virtue? How do we're starting to look at people as clean and unclean, as we probably have throughout history. But deepening into that, and so like putting pressure on myself, like, you're not doing enough to help other people, and all this.
Do you see pathways to this? Do you see any pathways to even starting the resolve for any of those, or?
I see many pathways, and the problem is I just don't commit to one of them. And even if I'm doing something like this, for example, this is a podcast. This is the 27th episode. I've done it 5 days a week this is the 6th week now. Wow.
6th week, yeah.
Yeah. So 5 days a week, pretty much same time, 1 o'clock for 6 weeks in a row. And I think this can help some people in just looking at the news differently and reflecting and going a little bit deeper onto some of the topics of the news, and hopefully bring a little more resolve to what's going on in their lives.
Well, I think,
but there's so many other things I could do. And then like, I'm not working all day and then I'm just sitting at home and this, oh, am I being lazy? Am I not doing enough? Oh, I could run exercises to help people reflect on emotion. Oh, I could run workshops so that people could practice dealing with different emotional scenarios. Oh, I could build an app, or I could build this other app. Oh, I could register to be someone who works at the polls, as you know, for voting. Oh, I could really spend all day campaigning and trying to convince Trump voters that they shouldn't vote for him. Oh, I could, blah, blah, blah. There's so much stuff I could do. And especially because I'm not moving, I'm just like sitting at home.
Right.
I think I feel this like, oh, I'm supposed to do more. I'm being this lazy guy just sitting at home,
Well, and it's interesting. I mean, there's a couple of things that I've heard around, well, at least one of the things in terms of getting people out to vote, or maybe people who are on the fence still about voting and what have you. The one thing that I thought that sounded the most successful actually was letter writing campaigns. So there are different organizations that are offering, I can't speak to them, but I'm sure if you Googled it, you can find it pretty easily. Is that because, getting people to talk on the phone is next to impossible. Then doing letter knocking. Oh my gosh, Ben, stop. Getting knocking on people's doors, and then oftentimes they really don't want to interact with you. Plus, with COVID, it's more complicated. But where people can really, I think too, it's like writing allows you to be a bit more thoughtful and like slow and like write out something really nice. And you could use the same letter more or less. I don't know if handwriting it would have more impact on someone. You're like, whoa, someone took the time to handwrite me a letter. Oh, I will read this. So just, I don't know if I know that you have seen Pathways and maybe you already know of that, but that one to me sounded the most sensible.
Well, and maybe it's not. For me, it's okay. Even if I did that, say I did that, and say I got 100,000 people in Michigan to go out to vote, there's still a part of me that's like, okay, and you're still not doing enough. You know what I mean? I don't know if other people experience this, but like,
I think,
especially when something doesn't feel so, I guess, intellectually, physically, or emotionally taxing for me to do, it doesn't seem like I've done anything.
By what?
Climbing a mountain feels like more work than, getting 100,000, if I could do it in a very productive and efficient way. I don't know. I don't know if my point coming across.
A mind-body dualism of sorts.
Like it's...
But I think, I mean, knowing you, I think pretty well at this point, I think at the seat of you, you have a lot of energy, and that driving force is hard to be fully quenched, I would say. And so I do think it would be fair of you to allow some space, knowing that you are trying as hard as you can, yet it would be impossible to meet all of the many things that are bubbling inside the cauldron of your mind, but it's what makes you. I think it's a very important characteristic of you. I think that's the other part of it is like, because even I was going to say before is like, I think another part of this podcast interview thing that you're doing is it is a reminder to others that life is weird. We often have a lot of expectations we cannot meet, even though we might want them very badly. And that doing something that shows, I would say, a number of sides of you in a very interesting light is has its own power,
Mm.
and I mean positively speaking. So that to me, in to a great extent, is what this show allows. You know, it invites a more messy, lot of gray area things to exist, and which is that's because that's the world. You know, getting from A to B in a straight line never happens. Even though people want it to or think it does, they think they got there somehow in a straight line. They never did.
Mm.
So I think this shows the contours. This reveals the little hills and the valleys that we all walk internally and externally to find ourselves. So that's a good thing. So
I was just thinking, I was like, man, it doesn't feel like I'm doing work with this show. And so maybe some other people, oh, you need to put in more preparation work. You need to do this. You need to do that. But other people are like, you've done how many shows for how long? Wow, I admire that you've done so many shows every single day at this time. Wow, it takes a lot of commitment. When you really focus on something, you could be really focused. And I'm thinking, this doesn't feel like a lot of work. Like, and so part of me is like, okay, I finished this. I got to go do some other stuff because maybe it's that high energy. Like,
yeah,
I got to burn it out. I got to do something.
you got to fire deep in there, burning real hardcore.
Yeah, orange. Huh? But I think there's also something about seeing the world in a certain way and wanting other people to see it in that way.
Mm.
And then really wanting people to see it that way instead of accepting it how they see it.
Mm.
And what I was talking about earlier is there a balance between, if I want to change the world, does that mean I feel dissatisfied with the world and how other people are? I want to change them because I don't like how they currently are. Is that in contradiction to loving a person? How much, like, for example, if I have a friend who joins a cult and I really dislike that they're in the cult and I don't think that the cult is good for them, is trying to change them and get them out of the cult, one, is it effective? Two, is it a very loving thing to do? Or is it to just love them no matter what?
Well, that third one is obviously always available. Right?
It's available. Yeah, it's available.
I'm not saying it's easy. But the way I think about love is that all other emotions are just like small little shards of the greater emotion that is love, right?
Mm.
So there's that very well-known phrase, all is fair in love and war, right? So a part of the way I interpret that, I push the war out. I don't really like that everything is fair in war.
Not all is fair in war.
No, people do it.
You're not allowed to use tear gas in war, according to the Geneva Convention.
Oh, right. But to get to my point though, is that it's like, when you fall in love, for example, you might become a total maniac and like go bananas because whether it's unrequited or not, you don't know, right? If this person has similar feelings towards you, but you would be willing to do just about anything. And I think in the process of all of those things, maybe a better example is once you are in a relationship, right? You do care about someone deeply and you do know that you love them, but you also have moments of anger. You also have moments of sadness. You have moments of fear, but those are all just little pieces of the greater whole of the love experience of that person. So I always see, when you care, is there a right way to care? I mean, I would say there are more successful ways, like you were getting, is an effective thing to ask your friend to leave the cult, or be like, hey, you've become a terrible person since you joined the cult, and that's sad, and I don't think you should do it. Like, work? Probably not. But it doesn't, it's not, but I shouldn't, it's a shame that you'd have to think like that you're caring about them the wrong way. I don't know if I don't even know how you could evaluate that. So
maybe it's just me getting stuck in the idea of trying to change the outcome, being really focused on the outcome. This person is in a cult. The outcome is for them to leave the cult.
yeah.
You know, I mean, but be very focused on that. Okay, I have to do whatever I can to make sure that this outcome happens
Right.
within bounds.
Yeah.
Instead of having a much more play attitude towards life and focus on the process and, okay, I'm going to interact with the person and see what happens.
Yeah.
And just this letting go of forcing the world to be in a certain way. Which is maybe coming back to that, I believe it's called like Wu Wei. Is that how you say it in Taoism? I
Oh,
think
maybe.
Bruce Lee was talking about this idea of kind of like just going like be water, you know, flow with it, which I think is this kind of, I think it's Wu Wei. Totally not getting the tones right, but
That I think you are. I think that is correct.
the idea of like not thinking, just being in the zone, you know, just kind of flowing with it.
Well, and that's the connectedness of chi, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Like the natural flow of things. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think that's what that means. But just the idea of moving with the rhythm, you know, and flowing with the music instead of trying to like, stop it. Okay, now turn this music on because I need this to like, whoa, just go with the beat, man. Like,
It's well, but I mean, it's a true. Yeah, there. I don't know. There is a really. It's this very strange dichotomy to hold. Like, I have a deep love for this person, and then, but they're in what feels like a very questionable. They've joined this very questionable group of people that I don't think is going to influence my friend in a positive way. And I guess because it's like, yeah, I would agree. I would think this outcome, like you're saying, is super important. I have no idea what you would do to just kind of gently guide this person towards something healthier or that's more self-promotional. I feel oftentimes a cult of that is like, you know, is an indoctrination to something else. But and that feels, I think too, I would have to say, stepping back into the political realm for a second, more in earnest, there are a number of loaded words that are seemingly at the ready in any given kind of media tropes that people are doing these days. You know, like the weaponization of something. I think indoctrination is another word. There's a word, I was trying to remember this the other day, and I feel funny that I can't think of it because it's been used enough, but because it's becoming more spread into like other places. But there was a moment when, that's it, to be radicalized. So that term is being thrown around like crazy, and all of them, I think, from any which angle, if you're more progressive, if you're more left leaning, if you're more right leaning, whatever, that term causes a very particular feeling in people. But it's used in very different ways depending on where you are in the political spectrum, right? But yeah, there is just this kind of very basic cannon fodder that is being thrown around so regularly to, maybe if nothing else, just disrupt the flow of what could be good, effective change or policy or whatever. You know, like everything just seems to be disrupting everything else. So like nothing kind of gets enough momentum before all of a sudden it just gets sidelined by some new, probably non-fact or whatever. But you get what I mean.
I get distracted because you sidelined yourself off the camera.
The chair is helping.
You get sidelined.
But you know what I mean. There's a lot of fairly consistent rhetoric these days that it mostly just seems kind of like emotional like firing at each other, but not to get anywhere. It's just to disrupt the flow of something that's happening.
Well, maybe it does have an intention. I don't know. Like, there's a part of me that thinks that a lot of people are trying to achieve specific outcomes, you know?
Oh,
And like, I thought about running for political office, and I told people, and they're like, "You'd never win." And I said, "That's okay. Running isn't always about winning. It's about campaigning and getting out and meeting with people, connecting with people, and sharing a new idea. And if I win, I win. If people choose me, and then I would be in office. But if I don't win, it's okay. It's about getting out again and focusing on the process." And people are like, "No, it's not. It's about winning. Why would I give you your money if you're not telling me you're going to win?" It's like, because it's about the process.
Doesn't that speak to a general psychology of the country, though?
It's all about winning. I'm like, no, it's actually about sharing ideas and sharing love with each other and kind of bringing people together. Like, no, it's not. It's about winning.
Well, we're right. Red against blue, or blue against red, or whatever, however you want to say it. This competitive idea, and getting to the top simply means just to be at the top. It doesn't mean, and it means you have power, but to actually be having a functional place or element, or better yet, a compassionate place, and wanting to truly be a public servant. Yeah, that a lot of that seems to have dwindled away into power and greed. And
it's that difference between being a public servant and wanting to serve the public. Serving the public is a verb.
Yes.
And this is what it's called, the nominization. Is that when we take a verb and we turn it into a noun?
Oh,
I forget how you call it in grammar. I think that's what it is. I think it's nominization.
I just say like verbalize or verbize.
No, that's the opposite. That's the opposite.
Oh. Right.
But like to take a noun or take a verb and turn it into a noun. So yeah, like serve or servant. I mean, it's turning into a person noun, but
what's interesting though is I have my own experience with this, not running for public office, but when I did my master's, I thought, a very clear vision of what I was going to do once I finished my degree. Did I go do that? Nope, not at all. But would I not have gone through the process of getting my master's? I wouldn't change that for my life. So many other things happened during that time. The people I met, the kind of work I ended up doing, the places I went. I had some amazing experiences when I was doing my master's, and I wouldn't want to not have those. And I met some wonderful people. I in fact, one of the people I became really close friends with, I eventually ended up introducing her to her husband during that time. There were like pivotal other things that happened to other people. And the fun and the neat thing is now I'm actually
transitioning
into new work where I'm going to finally be taking a lot of the stuff I did with my master's and start implementing it. But the process, like what you're saying, having had run, even if you hadn't made it, even though maybe you even felt pretty sure you weren't going to win.
Oh yeah, pretty sure.
But who cares? I remember when you were talking about this, and we talked about it a bit, and I was all excited. I was like, yeah, I think just the community you would have built from it would have been success in itself. And it is a shame that people they forget, like, really? You're telling me all the processes that you go through are just to get to the other end? I don't think that's true.
It reminds me of that video of, I think it was animated by the guys from South Park, but a video of Alan Watts doing like the music of life. Have you seen this video before?
No.
Oh, it's great. It's a video. I mean, it's narrated by Alan Watts, one of the lectures I think he gave. And Alan Watts, for those who don't know, is a philosopher. They say he is the westernmost interpreter of Eastern philosophy or something. Oh. I love Alan Watts stuff. I found his book, his autobiography, at a metaphysical bookstore in Santa Cruz back in the day. It was, anyways. But it talks about how so often we're just chasing for the end. We're trying to get to the goal. We're trying to get to the goal, and then when we get there, it's like, what was the point? Like we're dancing. We're going through. We go through school to get to the grade, and then we pass grades. Next grade, next grade, next grade.
One sec, Jim.
Yep.
Lawnmowers just started outside.
No, it's okay. Yeah, so we just go from grade to grade, passing, and then we graduate, and then we go to the workplace, and then we're trying to climb the ladder, get a higher position, and we finally get to the top, and then we realize, that's it. That was it. Oh, what a letdown. And he argues that the point of music is not to just wait for that one big crash of a cymbal at the end of the song and that's it. It's to dance along the way. It's to really be focused on the process and to really get into the moment. And I wonder how much of human life, naturally or biologically or whatnot, is about being in the moment. And yet, because we went down the path of agriculture and industrialization and all this other stuff, like settling, more permanent settlement, that we went down the path of trying to stop nature from changing how we want things to be, and very much more outcome focused. We need to harvest in the fall, so therefore we need this food, because if we don't get this food, we're all going to starve and die.
Right.
Aha. Versus like being nomadic and being like, oh, there's a fruit over here. Oh, there's no fruit here. Let's go to the next place.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think that's a great metaphor for much of what has happened since. But if you don't mind, you reminded me of this wonderful quote from Joseph Campbell that is very similar to what you're saying, and it says it's about seeking your life purpose. So it's a little different, but people say that what they're all seeking is a meaning for life. I don't think that's what we're really seeking. I think what we're seeking is an experience of being alive, so that our life experiences on the purely physical plane will have resonance within our own innermost being and reality, so that we actually feel the rapture of being alive. That's what it's finally all about. So, yeah, the process is way more important than the outcome.
It's at the end of the day, we all die.
Yeah.
The ultimate outcome is we all die.
Yeah, and no one wants to focus on that outcome.
Exactly. We lose everyone we care about. We lose everything we care about. At the end of the day, the final outcome is pretty bad. Well, unless depends on your religious beliefs, but
yeah. But yeah, I think so. It's funny, you're thinking about stability and change, and really maybe that the focus is more about the space in between those things, the process, the living through it, and learning about yourself, learning about the other people. And that's only going to happen if you take the time to do the thing, whatever that thing is. And which involves listening, involves not being the only one who's speaking.
Hey, you trying to attack my monologue?
No, definitely not.
I have a two-way conversation in the monologue. I was talking about NHL hockey announcers earlier. It was great. I was doing voices and everything.
No, you invited.
Oh my goodness!
But I think a lot of people are talking and they're not listening. I don't even know if they're listening very carefully to themselves when they're talking.
Maybe that's really, as I try so freaking hard to find what is the one thing to do in so many aspects. I try so hard to okay, it's this, it's process. We need to focus on process, or it's this or that. And then I keep getting slapped in the face with that idea of the 3 steps. That doing step 1 and step 2 of whatever the duality is, doing those 2 things and oscillating between the two gets to step 3, which is really just the combination of the two.
Mm-hmm.
And that so often in life, for those who haven't heard, like I'll try to take these 3 steps and I'll try to, I use the second step as the thing that we typically do more of. And I try to make the first step the one that we forget to do. So like this, I think a lot of us get locked into focusing on the outcome. So it wouldn't be getting rid of the outcome completely. It would
No.
be, okay, outcome is step 2. Step 1 is focus on the process.
Right.
So we don't forget focusing on the process, but then we also do step 2, the outcome. And if we focus on the process and the outcome, if we work those two back and forth, then it can really merge together and get us to that third step of feeling united on them. And yeah, I think, I don't know. I think that, because something I said to myself earlier the last couple of days is more loving, less saving. More loving of other people and less saving them. Oh, right. I just relaxed. Even saying it right now, my body just goes, oh, it's so much easier to love somebody than to try to save them and change them. Huh. But I can still try to save them and change them, but I just need to shift the balance a little bit. It's too far out of alignment.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, it's a good quality to have. I don't think caring so much is ever a bad thing. I mean, it can hurt, but I had with a friend recently, she lost a loved one, and it hit really hard, and she felt like she had in some way been stupid. And I said, what do you, how would you call yourself stupid? And I think there was a part of her that felt like, I loved too hard and now I'm hurting. And I'm like, no, don't ever stop loving this hard. That's not the thing to do. Don't block. Don't think it's dumb or small of you to love deeply and then be hurt deeply. Those are basically barometers of the same, amount of passion you have for wanting to care, And I think if that's your problem that you're managing, great problem to have.
If we let the pain be okay, if we let hurting be okay.
That's what I've assisted her in realizing, is that it is okay. It might suck, and you have a lot of complicated feelings that come around it, but letting them in, letting them go through their process, not focusing on the outcome of when you're going to be okay again, whatever that means. And you get there. It takes time, but I, in my ultimate words were like, I think you're going to love even harder after this. There's a great line in a movie I've recommended to you a couple times, and the guy, he asks him, it's a guy visiting a monastery, and he asks one of the head monks, he's like, well, why are you so happy? He's like, because I've lived through so much. So I love that. It's so great. He's been through a lot, and he's been okay with feeling all of that. And so, the outcome for him has been a deep joy, I think, a deep satisfaction of being present with life and taking it for all of its ups and downs and in betweens.
And not getting stuck or spiraling down into the numbness.
Well, right.
The indifference, the disconnection, and I think it's okay to feel the numbness, the disconnection. I think we need to distance ourselves at times and kind of shut down.
Oh, sure. You can't. Sometimes I think, so much that you just shut off.
Yeah. Sometimes it just happens, right? You get shocked. We get shocked so much. We don't know what's going on.
Right.
But sometimes we double down on that and triple down on that. We don't want to feel the pain in the future, so we just cut off.
Right.
We numb ourselves, and Problem with that is, as Brene Brown talks about, as the movie Garden State talks about, as many people have talked about, is that then you can't feel the joy either.
Yeah,
You know,
very neutral.
you cut off the pain, you numb off the anger, the fear, and the all that stuff, and you can't feel the stuff you want to feel either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean it's not the kind of rock I want to be.
What, the numb rock? You want to be the emotional rock?
Well, no, I mean,
You want to be pyrite? Do you want to be some shiny like
I think
amethyst? Or
you
what?
means rock, right? You're like solid. You're always there for them.
Oh, okay.
I want to be the guy who has people smell what I'm cooking.
You missed it. I talked earlier about the idioms that NHL the hockey announcers will make. I love them. Like I was reading one about Mickey Redmond. Have you heard of Mickey Redmond? Probably not.
No.
He's like a Detroit news sportscaster for the Red Wings. And I was looking through his Wikipedia page, and it said there's one Mickeyism that he coined, and it was something like the puck was in the crease, and there are a lot of people around trying to score. And he said, there are 10 hungry lumberjacks looking for the only pork chop, and one of them found it. And you're like, what? they just come up with stuff. It's great. There's a spoof on it by Thomas Middleditch. Do you know Thomas Middleditch from Silicon Valley?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Seen that show?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he's the main guy. Richard, he plays Richard. He did a spoof on hockey announcers. It's fantastic. I'll send you the link. It's about he was like actually a pretend hockey announcer at an LA Kings game, and he was just doing like the deepest Canadian. Like great. And maybe it's not even Canadian because I looked it up. One of the guys that this guy Doc Emmerich, who's one of the main announcers now, he's not Canadian. He's from Indiana or something, but he sounds deeply Canadian. I don't know. That was not Canadian.
Yeah, we need more O's and A's and talk about donuts.
Yeah. Oh man, about the process.
Story.
We love Canada. I miss Canada. We're not allowed to go. It's just here.
Oh right, you're much closer than I am. That's true.
Yeah, it's like 20 minutes away.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Canada. So Windsor, Ontario is just on the other side of Detroit, Michigan.
Oh,
so just right across the river. So you can take the bridge or you can take the tunnel if there isn't a pandemic. But I think they said they're not allowing Americans in for non-essential reasons until like October 2021.
Whoa.
So let's hope that we get a new form of government or not form, but leaders of government that may change the situation.
Form wouldn't hurt either. But.
Oh, speaking of food, I think you said form, but I heard food.
Like what?
I'm grateful you joined today, Caleb. As always, conversations feel messy sometimes to me and a little bit jumbled, but there are always, I think, nuggets in there that can help other people. And I know there's been some that have helped me. I feel a little more relaxed in asking myself, what do I want to do instead of what do I want to achieve? What do I actually want to do?
Right. Hacer.
Focus more on this. Hacer, sí. Yes. Sí, amigo.
Well, I like that in Spanish. Right, you probably know better than me, but I think it means to do and to make, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a process. It's be active, be in the action.
Yeah. Well, I mean, to do is a process in English too.
Well, but it's one word.
To do, yeah, versus have done.
Yeah, let's do things. I don't want to get things done.
Well, again, it's the focus on both, but I focus, and I think a lot of other people do as well, on like the outcome and what we want to have done instead of what we actually want to do.
Yeah.
So focusing a little bit more on what do we actually want to do? Do I want to spend all day behind the computer trying to convince people to go out and vote? Maybe. But would I rather go out and exercise? Yeah, probably. Like, would I rather run like a dance workshop or something online? Yeah, that sounds a little more fun for me right now.
Yeah.
But
You should do that. That sounds fun.
sawa sawa. That's some okay in Swahili. Anyways, thank you for joining, Caleb. Glad to see your face again, as always. Love
Thank
you,
you.
brother. And hopefully y'all had fun listening.
Bye, everyone.
Ciao.